Kyren Lacy clears the air on Brian Kelly. You'll hear what he had to say in our exclusive conversation. It's Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are free, available wherever you get podcasts. So please subscribe on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. A five-star cornerback is visiting LSU for the UCLA game this Saturday. You'll hear from Shay Dixon. Also, had a chance to sit down for a solid half an hour with LSU's lead booster when it comes to NIL, Gordon McKernan. You'll hear a clip of that conversation where Gordon goes into pretty explicit detail about the value of NIL deals and who LSU's biggest competition is and where the Tigers presently stand. We'll get to all of that. But I wanted to start today's show with a brief follow-up from the previous episode. Now, if you weren't here, we talked on the last episode about a report from CBS that there was a disconnect with Brian Kelly and his players. Well, I got lucky. And sometimes in life, timing is everything. That report came out where people were talking about it on Monday. Well, on Tuesday, on my radio show on 104.5 ESPN in Baton Rouge and syndicated all throughout the state of Louisiana, I had a chance to visit with LSU senior wide receiver Kyren Lacy. And we covered a lot of ground. Listen, Kyren's had a fantastic start to his season. Remember, this is a kid from Thibodaux who went to ULL, played 2 seasons for the Cajuns there under Billy Napier. When Billy Napier went to Florida and Brian Kelly was hired at LSU, Kyren Lacy jumped from the Cajuns to the Tigers and said point blank that, it was always his dream. It's every kid's dream in Louisiana to play for LSU, and Brian Kelly gave him that opportunity. So Kyren Lacy has patiently waited his turn. Remember, in 2022, he still had Kayshon Boutte. You had Malik Neighbors emerging a year ago. Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas were a fantastic duo. Dre Jenkins back in 2022, I should mention as well, in Brian Kelly's first year. Well, a year ago, Kyren Lacy was the number 3 receiver on LSU's team. And while he had a fantastic season, he was overshadowed behind a guy that should have won the Blitnikoff in Malik Neighbors and another first-round pick in Brian Thomas. Well, with those two now in the NFL, this is very clearly Kyren Lacy's show. Through 3 games, Kyren Lacy has 5 receiving touchdowns. That's second in the country. He leads LSU in receptions, receiving touchdowns, receiving yards. And I don't think that's going to slow anytime soon. He looks unguardable. He looks every bit the number 1 receiver that the 2 guys before him were, and others like Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson were before them. And when this spring's draft rolls around, Kyren Lacy is going to hear his name called very early. I might even suggest if he continues at this pace, he'll hear his name called in round 1. But we'll get there. The point is, I also had the opportunity to ask Kyren Lacy about Brian Kelly. In light of the report of this disconnect, who better to ask than a guy who's been here literally since Brian Kelly showed up? Now in his 3rd year at LSU, his 3rd year under Brian Kelly, and had an experience at another school under another coach. Well, I asked Kyren Lacy, not specifically about that report. I didn't want to lead him down that path. I asked him instead about Brian Kelly. Give a listen.
You mentioned your dream to play at LSU. Well, Brian Kelly gave you that opportunity after 2 years with the Cajuns. You've now been here for as long as Brian Kelly's been here. What's it been like to play for and play under and be coached by Brian Kelly?
My guy, Coach Kelly, man, it's amazing because he literally transformed me as a player, like not just on the field, but off of the field. Like my mental has grown. It's like, it's not about me anymore. It's about the team. So I have to, he made me like realize that I have to put the team first and everything else is going to come. So once, because when I always talk about like the little details, I get that from Coach Kelly because because when you sit back and watch and really pay attention, the little details do show up. The little details that you think don't show up, they show up every single time. So when I talk about details, discipline, winning, because we all want to win. Coach Kelly always emphasizes win. What's important now? So that's how I go about it. Coach Kelly helped me tremendously on and off of the field.
Coach Kelly helped me tremendously on and off the field. He's changed my life as a player and off the field. That doesn't sound like there's a giant disconnect between Brian Kelly and his players. Can we finally now put that conversation to bed? The issue at LSU right now is singular. They got to get the roster better. And a big part of that is NIL, and we're going to get to that conversation with Gordon McKernan here in just a quick second, and recruiting with Shay Dixon after that. But the point is, when you look at LSU's roster right now, you don't see Michael Brockers on the defensive line. You don't see Kevin Minter at linebacker or Kendall Beckwith at linebacker. You don't see Derek Stingley or Tre'Davious White at cornerback. You don't see Grant Delpit or Jamal Adams at safety. That's the problem LSU has right now. Oh, they got dudes offensively for days. You just heard from one of them in Kyren Lacy. They got a bevy of receivers, freak show tight ends that look like pterodactyls, a couple of bookend tackles that are going to be first-round picks, a fourth-year quarterback that's second in the country right now, or leading the country right now in passing touchdowns. You got it on offense. You don't have it on defense. And Brian Kelly's to blame for that, by the way. He inherited a bad situation. I've said that very openly. He inherited a bad situation, but Brian Kelly made mistakes early. Hiring Brian Polian to be his recruiting coordinator was a mistake. Hiring Matt House as his defensive coordinator was a mistake. Letting go of the defensive staff, letting go of Corey Raymond, handing that job to Robert Steeples, his first college job was the cornerbacks coach at LSU. That was a mistake. Letting Greg McMahon go as special teams coordinator, that was a mistake. Brian Kelly made mistakes. He's done a lot right. And you can't ignore the fact that you've had back-to-back 10-win seasons. You won the SEC West. You've had a Heisman winner. Oh, there's been successes. Just not the team success that is the expectation here. And you're not going to get there until you get the roster better. But the cavalry is on the way. You've got the number 3 recruiting class in the country right now for 2025. And there's an incredible class in Louisiana in 2026. And suffice to say, you start growing up some of these young guys in a hurry. Gabe Relaford, guys like PJ Woodland, Deshaun Spears, young Dominic McKinley. These young guys that are going to play a lot this year as freshmen. You can see a scenario where it's going to follow the path like it has offensively with Campbell and Jones when you decided to play them as freshmen because they had the higher ceiling. You're doing the same thing defensively right now. It took you 2 years to get there, to that realization. But now that you're there, you're going to start to see that incremental growth that hopefully becomes exponential growth. But you can talk about whatever industry source you want. How about the best receiver on LSU's team, a fifth-year senior vouching for his coach? Let's put that conversation to bed, shall we? Okay. It's Locked on LSU. Had a chance to visit with the Gord father, Gordon McKernan, who, by the way, is also featured on that Amazon documentary, The Money Game, prominently featured. That was the crux of our conversation with Gordon, but I did ask him point blank how LSU is doing right now in NIL, and he gave us a pretty candid answer. You'll hear it next. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. Love to tell you about FanDuel. Of course, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we got something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. By the way, Tigers this week are a 24.5-point favorite over UCLA. If you want to go lay the points with the Tigers, because UCLA is pretty atrocious, you can do it. You can go to FanDuel. FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Again, FanDuel.com. Great partners of ours here on Locked on LSU. And also love telling you about Game Time. If you've not discovered Game Time app, what in the world are you waiting for? If you're looking to buy tickets to live events, sporting events, concerts, whatever it may be, you got to download Game Time. Game Time picks, it filters out all the fluff. So it'll show you incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching throughout thousands of tickets. You got to check it out. Pick an upcoming live event on the app. Maybe you want to go watch the Tigers play the Bruins this weekend. You can browse through the seats on Game Time Picks. You can do that right now. There's super deals right now at Game Time, other different tiers of deals. One of the things that I love the most are the curated deals that makes it easy to find the best price on great seats. So check it out. They even have the seat views before you buy. You can see photos from your seat in the app. It's all right there. So here's what you do. You download the Game Time app, you create an account, and you use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account, redeem with the code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. So we've gone through the fact that LSU needs to improve a roster. That's undeniable. We all understand it. An undeniable part of recruiting or improving your roster right now in recruiting is NIL. And Tuesday ended up being a pretty significant day with a couple of NIL stories. We saw the University of Tennessee announce that they are instituting what they're calling a talent fee. It's going to be a 10% fee, surcharge, tax, whatever you want to call it, on every ticket sold. And that 10% is going to go into their cost of attendance coffers to help pay their student athletes. The state of Georgia, the governor on Tuesday approved or signed into law a bill that makes it illegal for the NCAA to punish schools in Georgia for paying their student athletes, even with name, image, and likeness. So essentially now the University of Georgia can pay its student athletes NIL deals, which the NCAA does not allow. Now, I'll remind you that the NCAA is a member institution where teams and universities choose to be a part of the NCAA, thereby abiding by their bylaws. Would the NCAA punish Georgia? I don't know. Could it go to court? If it does, the NCAA keeps losing in court, so we'll see. But it's a transformative time in college sports because of NIL. And at LSU, there has been nobody more central than Gordon McKernan with LSU's NIL efforts. If you are watching the Amazon documentary, the open of the first episode is a narration by Gordon McKernan. And they spent a great deal of time talking to Gordon about a lot of the NIL deals he did with the G team that he continues to do. Well, I've got a great partnership on my radio show with Gordon as well. And from time to time, we have the great opportunity to have Gordon in studio. Now, he was in studio with me for 30 minutes. And if you want to go hear that conversation, you can. You can search After Further Review on YouTube or in your favorite podcast app. You can get this entire 30-minute conversation with Gordon. But I pulled out a snippet, and this runs about 5 minutes that I want you to hear. And I started by asking Gordon a pretty open-ended question about how LSU is doing in NIL. And where the conversation went ultimately is how much some schools are spending on the biggest name prospects.
Yeah, I think we're in a good position, right? Are we in the best position? No. But I think relative to the other schools, we're in a good position. The donor base is still there and still attached to the program, so to speak, and wants to support it. And they've got a couple of guys who are really stepping up, and that's great to see. We're very creative in how we're doing things, I think, as a school. I think Coach Kelly is mindful of the salary cap. I hate to call it a salary cap now in a sense, but it is. Every school has a certain amount of dollars that they can dole out across all their sports, men and women, and you have to be aware of that. So he has a general idea between the school and sports properties and donors what he can spend, and I think he's trying to do it the best he can. And you know, we've lost a few players because we're not just going to throw money at him, but I think he wants to build a place that you want to come here first and be part of this LSU experience. And then, by the way, you can make some good money here too as well. So I do think that we're in a really good place, but I think you're starting to see the separation. I watched Texas this weekend, and they're looking much like we did 4 or 5 years ago in terms of the talent. You watch the speed, the size on the field, and that's directly due to the amount of money. They're just outspending everybody to get some of these athletes, right? And I think that'll be addressed some point in due time. If you have the rich schools really getting richer in terms of signing the better players, you know, it's going to leave a lot of people out with some very important congressmen and senators in different states who probably want to take a look at it, right? I mean, how does Alabama historically compete with the Texas when they're going to go to the oil money?
Do you think that's interesting because for as long as we've had the NIL conversation, and for as long as the NCAA, for example, has asked Congress to intervene, Congress forever, has just said, not interested.
Right.
Do you think there's a point where they do?
Without a doubt. I do. I do think so. And I'd heard from different relationships I have out of D.C. that it wouldn't happen this year because of the election year, right? But it's certainly going to in due time. And I think due time is sooner rather than later, especially if you get Texas on a couple-year run of some national championships and just reloading, right, just differently than everybody else could do. I think you're going to have some senators in other states who've long been a part of the experience of an Alabama or Georgia or Ohio State and can't compete with some of these oil schools and some other schools.
It's interesting because there has never been parity in college football, G.
No.
I mean, it's the haves and the have-nots.
Right.
It's just what defines the haves and the have-nots now is different than what it has been in the past.
Right. Yeah.
So I'll be fascinated. I am fascinated by the whole conversation. And maybe I'll just come from a standpoint where, as an admitted LSU guy, I'm an alum, as you are. I mean, but I want to see LSU do well and everything. I know you have an advantage in the dirt. With the amount of talent in this state, LSU, even though LSU's never going to outspend Texas,
right?
There's going to be kids that grow up here that'll give their arm, like Will Campbell, give his arm just to wear the purple and gold.
That's right.
So there's always going to be sort of that component.
Right. We don't have to spend as much. We don't. And that edge rusher that we lost out of Dallas last year is playing for Texas and is making a big impact. Yeah. I think he really in his heart wanted to come here. And he loved the experience and what we had to offer him, right? But they just put so much money on him, we couldn't compete. At the end of the day, they washed him in that.
Are you comfortable saying like what financial range we're talking for some of these types of players?
Yeah. I mean, I can give you a range, but yeah, these guys that we're talking about, it's from $750,000 to $1.5 million. That's yearly.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I'll tell you, and I've been very comfortable with my source of this information. Dominic Williams, the defensive lineman from TCU that LSU was recruiting, I am very confident in saying this number, that his ask was $1.2 million, and LSU was certainly not going to pay him that. I do not know what Oklahoma gave him.
Right.
I don't know if it was 1.2, but I know that was his ask. Yeah. And it was like, well,
Who was the receiver, the number one we lost to Texas or initially, and then
DeCorian Moore, who's now at Oregon.
A friend of mine over at Texas told me, we got him from you guys. We put a good package together, and then he said, "Well, I need to talk to Oregon," and they heard that he had committed to Oregon, and they upped their offer substantially, and we're over 7 figures, and he never gave him a counter. He didn't call him back and say, all right, well, let me see. I'll take that to them and see. So that shows you the depths of, and you hear it that Phil Knight really wants a championship before he dies. That's kind of what's coming back to me from my Texas friends is that, if the Nike billionaire decides to unleash it, it's going to be tough. And apparently that might be happening out there. But for the number one receiver to go to Texas and say, well, let me just go talk to Oregon and then go, oh, by the way, it doesn't matter. Don't even bother countering me.
Yeah. That oil money ain't sneaker money.
No, that's
apparently.
Right.
It's one thing to read it on a message board. It's another to hear a man who is stroking 7-figure NIL checks say it to you. The going rate for these premier players, they're getting $750,000 to $1.5 million per year. It goes to show you why LSU isn't able to compete at that level with Texas, with Oregon, because LSU doesn't have billionaires bankrolling their NIL. Gordon has been very generous, and there are a handful of NIL donors at LSU that have been very generous and allowed LSU to be competitive. But you heard him say at the beginning of that clip, Brian Kelly understands there's a salary cap, kind of how he phrased it. Understands how much money he's got to deal with, he's got to work with, and how he wants to allocate that appropriately. So something worth keeping an eye on. But how does LSU keep pace with Texas and Oregon and the like? You keep getting the best players in Louisiana to stay home, even if it's at a discount. We'll see if they can continue to do it. A guy who knows those answers is Shay Dixon on 3 The Bengal Tiger. Have a chance to visit with Shay here every week. We'll let you hear about a 5-star who's going to be on campus for UCLA this weekend. That's next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Well, this all just dovetails perfectly together today because I get to tell you about Roy. If you've not heard about Roy, Roy stands for Return on You. It's a new platform that lets you, the fan, get involved in NIL like never before, making contributions directly to your favorite athletes. I swear I didn't plan it this way. So by supporting players directly, you can help shape rosters, retain talent, keep your favorite athletes out of the transfer portal. And as you know, NIL has changed the game for athletes. Well, Roy changes the NIL game for fans. So here's why Roy is different. I would tell you most importantly, it's no risk contributions. So fan contributions are securely held and are only distributed if the athlete makes the decision that aligns with your support. If not, the money is returned to you, the fan. So if you're interested in learning more, download Roy. I did this yesterday, played around the app, and it's pretty fascinating to give it a go. Download Roy for iOS or Android. Enter the referral code Locked On, and you'll automatically be entered in a sweepstakes to win $5,000 cash. How about that? Just download, use the code Locked On, and you're entered in a sweepstakes for $5,000 cash. Visit joinroy.com for additional details. Again, joinroy.com. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. Get the Roy app for iOS or Android. Start making an impact on your favorite team. Use the referral code Locked On for an opportunity to win $5,000 cash. Visit joinroy.com for more details. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. Get off the sidelines. Get into the NIL game with Roy. All right, every week here on Locked On LSU, we have a chance to visit for a couple of minutes with Shay Dixon on 3 the Bengal Tiger. For my money, there's nobody better that covers recruiting in and around LSU than Shay Dixon. So we're always glad he can give us a few minutes. Couple things first and foremost. I did ask Shay about an update. We're going to get to this visitor. There's a 5-star coming to LSU for the UCLA game this weekend. But I did ask for an update on another 5-star. That's defensive lineman Jakeem Stewart, the number 1 player in the country for 2026, no longer at St. Aug. He is now enrolled at Edna Carr in New Orleans, but so far ineligible to play this season. So I asked if there's an update on Jakeem Stewart. Here's what Shay said.
All's been mum, and I don't think that's a terrible thing, right? He's at Carr now. He's going to school. I think he's in the process of just figuring out if I'm reclassifying, how do I get this all in order for when I can be able to reclassify it. That's December, this end of the second semester, the spring semester. Is it into the summer? Is there a way to get me onto a college campus by next fall? And I think that the kind of needs to go about that quietly. Things kind of blew up there for a couple of weeks where it became very public and I didn't think a great look of pulling. You pull out a couple of days before the season starts at St. Aug, and you end up at Carr, and now you're not playing. And he also didn't play his freshman year because of being ruled ineligible, and now you're talking about skipping a senior year, meaning you have only played a sophomore year of football. That's not the best case scenario. So I think right now he and his camp and others, college coaches, look, I know Frank Wilson's been involved here of saying, look, if you're going to come to LSU, here's the path, right? Like, here's what you need to do at Carr. Here's where you can put together coursework that will get you in, the credits transfer, and here's how many hours you need to carry, and the guidance counselors and everyone there will help out. So I think it's kind of a good thing right now that we're not on a day-to-day update with Jakeem Stewart. I think he needs to go ahead and figure out exactly what he wants to do so that the next time that it's public about, hey, look, this is what my future holds, that it's a bit more finite and locked in than it was previously.
So calm down a little there. I think maybe the most important newsy thing there from Shay is what he said about Frank Wilson. That Frank Wilson's been in touch with Jakeem Stewart to say, hey, look, if you're coming to LSU, here's what you have to do. Here's your credit hours, coursework, all that stuff. So they're very much in those conversations about if Jakeem Stewart reclassifies for 2025 as he plans to, how they get those ducks in a row. And LSU, the odds-on favorite to land him. And boy, he would be a big-time impact guy. We keep talking about if you're going to remake that defense, you know how you do it? You have Dominic McKinley and Jakeem Stewart and DJ Pickett and guys like that. The current freshmen, like I mentioned, Dominic Williams, Dominic McKinley, PJ Williams, Deshaun Spears at safety. That's how you do it. You get stud players on campus to keep growing and developing and getting better. And obviously the class of 2025, potentially 2026 will be a big part of that. So I asked Shay, home game this weekend, UCLA coming to Baton Rouge. what's the guest list like? And there's one 5-star who we know well who will be in Baton Rouge.
We'll start to put together kind of a confirmed list as we get a little bit closer. A lot of guys, obviously, with a 2:30 game, Louisiana and Texas kids, play Friday night, they have film study Saturday morning, and then how quickly can they make it to campus becomes the hurdle when you don't have a night game. Obviously, night games give them a lot more time to get over here. But I will say that by far, the most notable visitor will be DJ Pickett, who is there, again, number one corner in the country, top 3 player in the country, committed to Corey Raymond, and said that he committed to LSU because of Corey, and he wants to be developed and kind of follow that same path of getting back to DBU, and it doesn't get much better than him. It's the first of 3 home games he plans to attend. So the more often you keep him around, the better. He'll be here for UCLA this weekend with his family, and then he'll be back. I believe it's Bama and Oklahoma are the other 2 games, but good that early in the season here that you're getting him onto campus. And after him visiting Miami, where his cousin is playing right now, they were in the final kind of grouping, so it's always worth monitoring when he goes to that campus. But he's maintained to be solid. His dad said the same. Now he's headed over to Baton Rouge this weekend, and I'm certain that you won't miss him. If you're a fan and you're looking at recruits on the sidelines, he's the legit 6'3", 6'4" kid standing out there that looks like he probably should already be suiting up at UB. A massive pull.
Suffice to say, DJ Pickett, when LSU opens up the season next year against Clemson, he will be on the field in the first defensive series. Safe assumption?
If not, that means that some of these other guys like the Stamps and this young group Woodland had hell of a season and off seasons. I think that we've seen it with Stingley. We saw it with Eli Ricks. We saw it with a number of corners. Greedy not long into his career. Dante Jackson not long into his career. Christian Fulton. I could go on and on. But yes, that if you're this good and this highly touted, I'm not even talking rankings. I'm just saying what I know that from sources the staff thinks of a guy like DJ Pickett, that yes, he will be on the field early and often next year.
As I have said, we'll continue to say, the cavalry is on the way. Hey, we're glad to have you aboard with us here. Do us a favor. Please smash that like button. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. If you're listening on your favorite podcast app, please subscribe, rate us, leave a review, and let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.